Hello and welcome to the first episode of my new series, Narrative, the True Story. I'm Melanie Ann Phillips, co-creator of the Dramatica Theory of Story, and we're here in my creative space where I compose music and write novels so that we won't be disturbed when I share with you everything I've learned about narrative in the past third of a century. Well, I don't like long introductions on videos. I like to get right to the content. And if you do too, I suggest you skip the rest of this first video and go right to the second one in the playlist, where we'll be into the meat of the matter, learning about what narrative is, how it works, and how you can use it for both fiction and in the real world. Still, introductory segments have their benefits. You can lay the foundations for things to come. And if you're with me, I'll try to keep it short. Back in the 1980s, Chris and I were just out of college, and we'd written a number of stories, and were having a lot of structural problems. And we couldn't find solutions through our instructors at USC, nor could we find them from popular models of story at the time, which seemed to be able to tell you how you could create a good story of this particular kind under these conditions at this particular time. But you couldn't tell other kinds of stories under other conditions at other times, and we found that insufficient. We wanted something that would allow us, paraphrasing Abraham Lincoln, to tell all kinds of stories under all conditions at all times, something that always worked. Well, we played around with it for a while and got nowhere, and 10 years later he was the partner with Steve Greenfield, boy genius computer programmer, in a company called Screenplay Systems that created software for the entertainment industry. In fact, they got an Academy Award for creating the first word processor for screenplays called Scriptor. Their company was rather substantial at that time, and so Chris and I got together, and using his company resources, we had the luxury of spending 3 solid years of full-time effort for both of us to try and crack this code, supported by his staff. And in the end, we actually did. A lot of people have referred to it as the DNA of story structure, and I have to admit we felt like Crick and Watson trying to come up with this model. And once we came up with it theoretically, we turned it into a computer model that actually allowed an author to analyze existing stories to see how they worked, or to create their own stories with flawless structure. And we marketed that as part of a software program called Dramatica. So there's the Dramatica Theory, which is all that we discovered about how it works in the conceptual model, and there's the Dramatica software, which puts it into place so you can use it as a tool. All right. So what we came up with ultimately was a system that would allow anyone to analyze or sequence the genome of an existing narrative to understand what it was doing, how it worked, and what it was trying to achieve, and also to be able to create their own narratives, a genome for their own narrative, so that it would function exactly as they wanted it to and have the impact that they desired. It was pretty spectacular. In fact, it was spectacular enough that the U.S. government ended up hiring us for the intelligence agencies as consultants to try and use our model to determine what terrorists were thinking and how they would behave under different kinds of conditions. We ended up working for the CIA, the NRO, the NSA, and a number of other agencies, and even using it in corporate America for Fortune 500 companies and even a sports team to try and understand how we could merge together all of the different high-value players so that they worked as a team. This is the power of narrative, and this is what we discovered in our theory, and this is what we implemented in the software. Now, recently I turned 70, and I decided that I had learned so much about narrative that had never been documented anywhere, that when I kind of croak off, it's lost, it's gone. And so before that happens, I want to document that so that it's out there. Anyone who wants to learn it, anyone who wants to advance it, or to find new ways of applying it, can go to that source, and that information will always be available. And I selected YouTube as the best place. I know that one person I followed on YouTube, who was a musician, died of cancer 10 years ago, and his videos are still up there with no activity on his part because people go to them and it's all ad-driven, which makes perfect sense. So I figured this is where I'm going to put the material. Well, that's it for the introduction. I'm going to be, from this point forward, creating videos that will be in the playlist by order of popularity. There are other places that you can go, and you'll find them in the descriptions of each video, where I have put things in a more linear fashion over the years, videos dating all the way back to 1999, and books that I've written that explain it in a more linear fashion. But that doesn't cover a lot of the nitty-gritty, a lot of the details of how it works, and the specific applications that are truly amazing when you understand how narrative functions, not only in fiction, but in our own psychology, which is where it comes from, in sociology, which is where another part of it comes from fiction, and how it even influences how we perceive the laws of physics. So there's a lot of material here. I think this is open-ended, but this introductory video cannot be. So I will close by saying thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy these videos to document everything I've learned about narrative in the past third of a century.